The air between us was electric, charged with something we both felt but couldn't name. His fingers brushed against mine as we explored the dusty rooms, and each accidental touch sent shivers down my spine. "You're trembling," he whispered, his voice low and knowing, stepping closer until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I should have pulled away, should have remembered the ring on my finger. But when he looked at me like that, all rational thought vanished. His hand found my waist, gentle but certain, and I knew there was no turning back. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button and subscribe if you're enjoying this. Your support means everything and helps bring you more stories like this. The call came at midnight. "Fiona, I need your help." Ryder's voice carried that familiar hint of mischief that had always gotten us both into trouble. "There's this place I found, an old house on Maple Street. I think you'd love the architecture." I glanced at the empty bed beside me, Lucas still away on his business trip for another week. The silence in our perfect suburban home felt suffocating. "It's past midnight, Ryder." "Come on, when have you ever said no to an adventure?" He was right. Growing up, I'd followed him everywhere, drawn to his fearless spirit like a moth to flame. Even now, at 30, married and supposedly settled, something about his voice still made my pulse quicken. 20 minutes later, I found myself standing before a Victorian house that time had forgotten. Paint peeled from its weathered siding, and wild vines claimed the wraparound porch. Ryder emerged from the shadows, flashlight in hand, that crooked smile I remembered from our teenage years lighting up his face. "You came," he said, stepping closer. "Did you doubt I would?" The space between us felt charged, dangerous. He'd always had this effect on me, this ability to make everything else fade away. Even as kids, people mistook us for a couple rather than step-siblings. The resemblance was there, same dark hair, same restless energy, but the connection ran deeper than genetics could explain. "The previous owner died 6 months ago," he explained as we approached the front door. "No family to claim it. I've been watching it, waiting for the right moment." His hand found the small of my back, guiding me up the creaking steps. The touch was casual, brotherly, but it sent warmth spreading through my core. "Right moment for what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "To show you something beautiful," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear as he reached around me to push open the heavy door. The interior was a time capsule. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight, revealing elegant crown molding, and hardwood floors beneath layers of neglect. "Look at this craftsmanship," I breathed, running my fingers along the intricate woodwork of the banister. "They don't make houses like this anymore." "That's what I thought you'd say," Ryder replied, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You always saw beauty where others saw decay." We moved through the rooms like explorers in a forgotten world. The kitchen still held mason jars filled with preserved fruits, their contents long since spoiled. The living room contained furniture, draped in white sheets, ghostly figures frozen in time. But it was the ballroom that took my breath away. The chandelier hung dark and magnificent, crystals catching fragments of moonlight that streamed through tall windows. The hardwood floor stretched before us, polished to a mirror shine despite the years of abandonment. "Dance with me," Ryder said suddenly, extending his hand. I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty space. "There's no music." "There's always music if you know how to listen." He pulled me into his arms before I could protest, one hand settling at my waist, the other intertwining with mine. We moved slowly, swaying to a rhythm only we could hear. His body was warm and solid against mine, and I found myself melting into his embrace. "Remember when we used to sneak out to dance competitions?" he murmured, his lips close to my ear. "You always complained that I led too aggressively." "You still do," I whispered back, but I didn't pull away. If anything, I pressed closer, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Some things never change," he said, his voice rough with something I didn't want to identify. His hand slipped lower on my back, fingers splaying across the curve of my spine. The touch sent electricity racing through my veins. We turned slowly in the moonlit ballroom, the outside world forgotten. There was only the whisper of our feet on polished wood, the sound of our breathing growing heavier, the magnetic pull drawing us together like we were caught in each other's gravity. "Fiona," he said my name like a prayer, like a confession. His forehead touched mine, and I could see the conflict in his eyes, the same war raging in my chest between what we should do and what we wanted. "We shouldn't," I whispered, even as my body betrayed me, fitting perfectly against his. "I know," he replied, but his grip tightened, and I felt the evidence of his desire pressing against me. "But I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what we could have been if things were different." His honesty stole my breath. I'd thought I was the only one carrying this secret flame, this dangerous attraction that had grown stronger over the years instead of fading. Lucas loves me, I said weakly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Does he make you feel like this? Ryder asked, spinning me slowly, our bodies never breaking contact. Does he make your heart race? Does he make you forget everything else exists? The answer was written in my silence, in the way I trembled, in his arms, in the soft gasp that escaped when his thumb traced circles on my wrist. The dance became something else, something slower, more intimate. Our movements grew languid, hypnotic, like we were underwater, moving through liquid desire. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone, and I leaned into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. Tell me to stop, he whispered, his mouth inches from mine. Tell me to walk away and I will, but I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Instead, I rose on my tiptoes, closing the distance between us. The first brush of his lips was gentle, questioning, giving me one last chance to pull away. When I instead parted my lips in invitation, he deepened the kiss with a hunger that matched my own. His mouth was warm and demanding, and I responded with years of suppressed longing, pouring everything I couldn't say into that single moment of connection. We broke apart, breathing hard, staring at each other in the silver moonlight. Upstairs, he said simply, and I nodded, beyond words, beyond rational thought. He took my hand, leading me up the grand staircase, past portraits of long-dead family members whose painted eyes seemed to follow our ascent. The master bedroom was at the end of a long hallway, its door standing open like an invitation. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting everything in ethereal silver. The four-poster bed dominated the room, its mattress surprisingly clean beneath layers of dust that Ryder brushed away with gentle hands. Are you sure? He asked one more time, giving me a final opportunity to change my mind. Instead of answering, with words, I reached for the hem of my sweater, pulling it over my head in one fluid motion. His intake of breath was audible in the quiet room. You're so beautiful, he whispered, stepping closer, his hands hovering just above my skin as if afraid I might disappear. I've dreamed about this moment for years. His confession sent heat pooling low in my belly. I reached for his shirt, desperate to feel skin against skin, to eliminate every barrier between us. When his chest was bare, I placed my palms flat against his heart, feeling it thunder beneath my touch. He was lean and strong, muscles defined, from his work in construction, and I traced the lines of his torso with wondering fingers. He shuddered under my exploration, his hands finally settling on my waist, thumbs tracing the edge of my lace undergarment. I need you, I breathed against his neck, tasting salt and desire on his skin. I've needed you for so long. He lifted me easily, settling me on the edge of the bed, his hands tangling in my hair as he kissed me with renewed passion. His mouth moved from my lips to my throat, finding the sensitive spot that made me arch against him, a soft moan escaping. Every touch was reverent, worshipful, like he was memorizing every inch of my skin. His fingers traced patterns of fire down my spine, unhooking my undergarment with practiced ease. When the lace fell away, he pulled back to look at me, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. Perfect, he murmured, lowering his head to press kisses along my collarbone, moving lower with deliberate slowness. My fingers tangled in his hair, holding him to me, a sensation built like a storm in my veins. When his mouth found the sensitive peak of my form, I cried out, my back arching involuntarily. He worked with patient skill, building the tension until I was trembling beneath him, lost in waves of sensation. His hands roamed my body with confident familiarity, as if he'd been touching me forever, as if this moment was inevitable rather than forbidden. When his fingers found the heat between my thighs, I gasped his name, my hips rising to meet his touch. He stroked with gentle precision, reading my body's responses, adjusting his rhythm until I was writhing beneath him, desperate for more. Please, I whispered, the word torn from deep in my chest. I need you now. He rose above me, pausing to shed the last of his clothing, and I drank in the sight of him, masculine and beautiful in the moonlight. When he settled between my thighs, the first touch of his readiness against my core made us both moan softly. He entered me slowly, carefully, giving me time to adjust to his size. The stretch was exquisite, a perfect fullness that made me feel complete for the first time in years. We stayed still for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air, overwhelmed by the intimacy of the connection. When he began to move, it was with the same rhythm we'd found dancing, slow and deep and perfectly synchronized. Each thrust sent pleasure radiating through my core, building toward something magnificent. I wrapped my legs around his waist, drawing him deeper, meeting his movements with my own. You feel so good, he groaned against my neck, his voice strained with the effort of maintaining control. So perfect around me. His words sent another wave of heat through me, and I clenched around him, making him gasp. The sound was music to my ears, evidence of how much I affected him, how this wasn't one-sided desire. The pace quickened gradually, our bodies finding their natural rhythm, moving together like we'd been lovers for years instead of moments. The bed creaked softly beneath us, a counterpoint to our breathless moans and whispered endearments. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing, and the tender gesture nearly undid me completely. I felt the familiar tightening low in my belly, the tension that signaled my approaching peak. "Ryder!" I gasped his name like a prayer, my free hand clutching his shoulder. "I'm close." "Together," he promised, his thrusts becoming more urgent, more focused. "Wait for me, sweetheart. We'll reach the peak together." The endearment broke something open inside me, and I felt tears slip down my cheeks even as pleasure built to unbearable heights. This was what I'd been missing, this connection, this feeling of being truly seen and desired. When his thumb found the sensitive bundle of nerves at my core, stroking in perfect rhythm with his thrusts, I shattered. The climax rolled through me in waves, stealing my breath, my vision, my sense of everything except the man moving within me. I cried out his name, my body clenching around him, and he followed me over the edge with a deep groan, his body tensing as he found his own release. We held each other through the aftershocks, hearts pounding in unison, skin damp with exertion and emotion. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers combed through my hair in soothing strokes, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. "What happens now?" I whispered into the darkness, voicing the question that hung between us like a shadow. "I don't know," he admitted, his arms tightening around me, "but I don't regret this. Do you?" I considered lying, considered taking the safe path, but his honesty deserved the same in return. "No," I said finally. "I should, but I don't. I've never felt anything like that before." He was quiet for a long moment, processing my confession. "Lucas is a good man," he said finally, and I heard the guilt in his voice, the weight of what we'd done. "He is," I agreed, hating myself for the betrayal, even as I couldn't bring myself to regret the beauty of what we'd shared. "But he's not. You." The words hung in the air between us, dangerous and true. Ryder's arms tightened around me, and I felt him press a kiss to the top of my head. "We should go," he said reluctantly. "Dawn's coming, and people will be waking up soon." I nodded against his chest, knowing he was right but unwilling to break the spell of this moment, this perfect bubble of intimacy we'd created. We dressed, slowly, reluctantly, stealing kisses and touches like teenagers afraid of being caught. The walk back to our cars felt like a death march, each step taking us further from the magic we'd shared and closer to the reality of our complicated lives. At my car, he caught my hand, pulling me against him for one last kiss, deep and desperate and full of everything we couldn't say. "This doesn't end here," he whispered against my lips, and I felt the promise and the threat in his words. "I can't let you go, not after tonight." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it had to end, that we couldn't do this to Lucas, to our family, to ourselves. But the words wouldn't come, because deep down I knew he was right. This thing between us, this magnetic pull, was too strong to ignore, too powerful to simply walk away from. I drove home in a daze, my body still humming, with the memory of his touch, my lips still tingling from his kisses. The house felt cold and empty after the warmth of his embrace, and I found myself counting the days until Lucas would return, dreading the moment I'd have to look him in the eye and pretend nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I'd crossed a line I could never uncross, opened a door I could never fully close. As I lay in my marital bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew this was only the beginning. Ryder had awakened something in me that had been sleeping for too long, a hunger that wouldn't be easily satisfied. And despite the guilt, despite the consequences, I found myself already planning when I could see him again. The next morning brought Lucas's call, his cheerful voice a sharp contrast to the turmoil in my heart. "How's my beautiful wife?" he asked, and I closed my eyes against the wave of guilt that crashed over me. "I'm fine," I lied, hating how easily the deception came. "Missing you." That part at least was partially true. I did miss the simplicity of our life before last night, the clear lines and easy choices. "I'll be home day after tomorrow," he said, and I felt panic flutter in my chest. 2 days to figure out how to act normal, how to hide the fact that everything had changed. "I can't wait," I said, and wondered if he could hear the strain in my voice. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen, staring at my wedding ring, remembering the day Lucas had slipped it on my finger, promising to love and cherish me forever. The guilt was overwhelming, but it was tangled up with something else, something that felt dangerously like anticipation. Because even as I hated myself for what I'd done, I couldn't stop thinking about Ryder's hands on my skin, his voice whispering my name in the darkness, the way he'd made me feel alive for the first time in years. I was married, committed, supposed to be happy with the life I'd built. But one night in an abandoned house had shown me what I'd been missing, what I'd been settling for. My phone buzzed with a text, and my heart raced when I saw Ryder's name. "Can't stop thinking about you," it read, and I felt heat pool low in my belly despite my better judgment. I stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering over the keyboard, knowing I should delete the message and block his number, knowing I should confess everything to Lucas and beg his forgiveness. Instead, I typed back, "Me neither." And with those 2 words, I sealed my fate, choosing desire over duty, passion over propriety. Whatever came next, whatever consequences awaited, I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were before. Ryder had lit a fire in me that wouldn't be easily extinguished, and despite everything, I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. Have you ever found yourself torn between what's right and what feels inevitable? Between duty and desire? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. No judgment here, just honest conversation about the complicated nature of the heart. Don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button for more stories that explore the messy, beautiful complexity of human relationships. Ring the notification bell so you never miss when passion meets consequence in our next tale.